This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.
Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Bullscast with me, George Holloway. We've got a packed festive edition of the pod for you this week as Hereford face two local rivals in the space of 5 days. It's the two counties derby on Boxing Day as the Bulls welcome Kidderminster to Edgar Street before heading to the Valleys to face high-flying Merthyr at Penydarren Park. We'll look at how Hereford can close the gap to Harriers and avenge their defeat from 12 months ago. Is there a way to stop Merthyr's goal machine, Ricardo Rees? And how important is the next week for the remainder of Hereford's season? To try and answer all of that, I'm joined, as always, by Keith Hall. Thanks for joining me, Keith, to look ahead to an important Christmas week for Hereford. It's Kidderminster at home on Boxing Day and then a trip to Merthyr 4 days later on the 30th. Let's start, though, with the 4-2 defeat at Chorley on Saturday. And there was some hope and optimism for Hereford heading into this game after a couple of positive performances and results, but that had very much been extinguished by the full-time whistle.
Well, it was extinguished to a degree after about 4 minutes, wasn't it? Yet another early goal conceded. Cross coming in and Hudson was sort of challenging Popula, but he managed to bundle the ball into the back of the net and got credited with the Chorley opener. And you thought, oh dear, here we go again. And it was up to Hereford to withstand an awful lot of pressure in the first 20 minutes, which they did. And then Andy Williams got a goal to make it one apiece, and we suddenly had a bit of momentum in the match.
And Jola Popula was a player that you name-checked in our preview.
Yeah, he got that experience to see up at Marine in the National League North. And even though he's 18, he's quite a physical style of striker. Seems to like to hold the ball up and bring other players in. And a bit of a handful even at such a young age. And so I just thought he might be a thorn in the Hereford side. And early on, it proved to be the case.
It's a point we've made plenty of times on the podcast already, so we won't dwell on it too long. But Hereford keep giving themselves a mountain to climb.
They do, and I'm just so pleased that Andy Williams got the equaliser. It was great work, to be fair, to get that to him. Harley Hamilton burst into the box and just gave it to Williams, a short, sharp pass, and Williams did the rest, chipping it over the top of Matt Irwin into the back of the net. So from there on to the half-time, Hereford with the dominant force, and you just thought, the Bulls will have a real chance here of getting something from the game, if not a victory. Then, of course, the most controversial moment of the match, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a minute.
Just to touch on Andy Williams there, Keith, with striker options short at the moment, how good is it to see Andy Williams stepping up?
Well, he's the man most likely to score, other than Sam Osborne probably at the moment. But he's got to get that yard of space, never been a target man, so he's not likely to have that physical presence down the middle. Holding up style player, and he much prefers it on the deck, and I still think that's the way Hereford should go. If Andy Williams is up there as a solitary striker, feed the ball into his feet or just around the defender rather than in the air, because it just comes straight back at Hereford most of the time.
Sam Osborne thought he levelled for Hereford when he headed in Jaden White's cross just before half-time, but the linesman's flag was up. Should this goal have stood?
Ball came in to Osborne at the far post, who headed it in, went straight over Matt Irwin into the back of the net. I'd love to see this on the highlights, because the flag went up late and ruled the goal off. Now, it couldn't possibly have been Osborne that was offside, so it had to be probably Andy Williams, but then he was not obstructing the view of Matt Irwin. So it's one of those that in the press area really wanted to monitor just to see what had happened, because that would have put Hereford 2-1 up a couple of minutes before half-time, and it would have definitely been a momentum shift in the match, because Hereford were the dominant team at that particular moment.
What do you think the officials have seen in that, Keith?
Well, it was a late flag as well. The ball had already gone in the net by the time the flag went up, because it was right in my line of vision, staring straight at the assistant referee, put his flag up. And there was no discussion between the referee and the linesman. They just gave offside. And I just felt there's something didn't fit, really. Andy Williams was going berserk, throwing his arms in the air, as he does tend to do sometimes. But it looked a good header from Osborne, straight into the opposite corner. And No, offside was the decision.
We were just 5 minutes into the second half when Ellis struck to give Chorley the lead, Keith.
Yeah, that turned around again. Yeah, one of those moments at the start of the half. Are you really switched on after the half-time interval? All those sort of questions will be asked. But yeah, Ellis turned it around 2-1 and we were back to where we were after just 4 minutes in the first half. And Hereford just cannot keep doing this.
Again, it's a sucker punch, isn't it, Keith, to not only the players' confidence, but also the travelling fans. And when it's at Edgar Street, of course, the crowd and the atmosphere.
Yeah, it doesn't help at all. And what seems to be happening is the teams are now dropping that ball in and around the 6-yard box, whether it's from free kicks or corners, and Hereford are not dealing with it. They're not getting the ball away. Howkins might be pinned in there, so he'll take one of the players away, but he's blocked, and then you get someone running around the back, and that's where the ball is delivered to. I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times already this season, and it's the player who's arriving late. He's got almost a free header. He's not challenged, and it's a goal from no more than 6-8 yards out, and it's happened too many times, and Hereford have got to address it somehow. I know Theo Richardson's not going to be the most dominant goalkeeper in the air inside the 6-yard box. Great shot stopper, kept Hereford in the game from that perspective, but he's not a dominant keeper who's going to come out and grab that ball under pressure necessarily within the 6-yard box. So it's up to the defenders around him to just get that block in and get that ball away. And whether it's up to the midfield players as well to put their body on the line, it's not just the defenders who've got to do their job, it's across the 11.
Did it feel like game over when Wilson hit Chorley's third 10 minutes later?
Well, it was driven in, wasn't it, from the edge of the area at 3-1. Yeah, we thought it's happened too quickly for Hereford to respond to make it 3 apiece. It's going to be very, very difficult indeed. And then, of course, we get Tom Walker, who was my man of the match for Chorley. It was a thorn taking on Hereford players throughout the game, I felt. And it was a really good sucker punch for a counter-attack and a lovely low finish into the corner to make it 4-1. You certainly felt, well, there's no way back for Hereford now.
Yeah, Tom Walker was a player that got on the ball plenty of times on Saturday.
Yeah, I thought he was outstanding for them. We were talking in the preview, weren't we, last week about Chorley not relying on 1 or 2 individuals anymore. They're a collective unit, and that's what they did to Hereford. I think it was 7-2, wasn't it, in aggregate now? They've beaten Hereford, done the double over the Bulls after a comprehensive win over Hereford at Edgar Street. When they were on top, they looked really good, but they were suspect at the back. We just didn't really get the ball in the final third too many times.
Andy Williams scored Hereford's second on 85 minutes, but a consolation, Keith?
Yeah, we were saying, Toby Brick was summarising with me and just said, look, it's a little bit too late. Players are going to have a go now. They didn't give up. Spirit was there, but 4-2 with 5 minutes to go, and then little bit of stoppage time at the end of the game. It was unlikely Hereford would suddenly come up with another 2 goals to force a draw, but it was the start of both halves that really were the problem.
You mentioned how Chorley looked susceptible at the back. Is that part of the disappointment, or will be part of the disappointment after this result, Keith? We were talking in the preview about how Chorley didn't look like themselves, didn't look like the team that made the playoffs last season. Hereford were coming into this one off the back of a little bit of momentum and positive results, and yet the beginning of both halves killed them.
Yeah, you were hoping, weren't you, that Hereford have got that little bit more confidence now to go out there. Got a decent record at Chorley in recent seasons. There's absolutely no reason why they should go there and fear Chorley at that stage, but it didn't work out for them overall. As I say, I hear Paul Caddis talking about desire at the end of the game. Well, I think it was more desire to get those blocks in and have the physical style of the game that undid Hereford. Surely much better than the Bulls at that. You look at set pieces and corners, they've worked on several of those, and he even seemed to have looked at Hereford's weaknesses one way or another and tried to exploit them. So, I give enormous credit to Andy Priest for that. I was talking to their media officer before the game, and I said, well, it looks as though you're playing a diamond in midfield today, maybe 3 at the back, 3-4-3. And he said, look, we just do not know. With Andy Priest, he's quite capable of changing They might be the same personnel, but they're going to be asked to play in different formations and different ways. So they don't necessarily know and can anticipate how Chorley are going to set up. And it was one of those cases where I think he got the big calls right, and they got the ball into the areas that, Hereford are unhappy with, whether it's pace from a counter-attack or whether it be just dropping that ball, as I say, in and around the 6-yard box, causing havoc in there, getting those blocks in so the Hereford defenders couldn't get to the ball. And I see a lot of it in the Premier League now as well. And we talked about focus and attention at the start of the game, and we've also talked about, managing situations when they're coming in, those free kicks and corners. Somebody should be taking absolute charge of those and getting that physicality in to withstand some of these balls that are just literally dropped into an area. Somebody's got to, row Z, just get it out.
Now, let's expand on the comments from Paul Caddis after the game, Keith. It was an interesting interview that he gave to BBC Hereford and Worcester's Carson Wishart, talking about the 6 to 7 players that may well be leaving in January. What did you make of it?
Well, I was staggered that he would come out with that and say, look, we're going to probably lose 7 players. That is the danger of taking too many players on loan and having too many non-contract players. I've talked about that endlessly over the last couple of seasons. Certainly when Josh Gowling was in charge, it seemed to be a theme that Hereford would go down. We only have a certain number of contracted players signed on, and the others have to supplement it. And when it goes wrong, like it is at the moment, and you may have got really good loan players, and I think several of them are performing, the likes of Sam Osborne, likes of Ilani Edwards. You'd like to keep them for the full season. You may have an agreement at the start that it is a season-long loan, but then there is that position over the Christmas period when the parent club can quite rightly change their minds over that. So you end up losing 2 of your best players, as it were, and you're not going to be able to replace them very, very quickly. Every team wants a squad over the festive period and into the new year, and it's going to be very hard, I would have thought, to bring players in necessarily in January. And some of the players that I believe Paul Caddis has been looking at are probably part-time. It's all about money in some cases. Players are still mercenaries at the end of the day. Most players will just go for that extra £50 here or there.
If you were to flip it and try to be ultra positive on the situation, Keith, could you say that Hereford didn't get their recruitment necessarily spot on in the summer? Is this a chance to try and correct that?
Okay, yeah, if those players become available in the January transfer window, which will be right across the divisions, so therefore a National League North team is not going to necessarily pick up the first priorities for some other clubs. But yeah, it'd be lovely if suddenly you've got that recruitment right with another 5 or 6 new players coming in. I just find that very difficult to believe, and it seems a consequence of what happened in June, July and August, and everything following that. We're just constantly trying to catch up.
So poor result for Hereford, a disappointing result, should I say, for Hereford on Saturday. On the other hand, Keith, Chorley, do you see them climbing up the table as the season goes on?
Well, they always seem to be there or thereabouts, don't they? But I don't think they're quite as strong as they once were. But as I was alluding to Andy Priest, what an experienced manager he is. And he seems to know and drive things forward and make sure that his squad will play the way he wants them to play. And eventually I think he'll probably get it right. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a late entry, shall we say, into the top 10 towards the end of the campaign.
There were plenty of goals in the National League North on Saturday, starting at Chester, who lost 3-1 at home to South Shields. It finished Darlington 1, Kings Lynn 1, Peterborough Sports 0, Scarborough 4, Radcliffe 2, Leamington 1, Bedford 1, Marine 1, Southport 1, Worksop 1. It was the same scoreline at Spennymoor, who drew with Oxford City. Merthyr beat Curzon Ashton by 2-1, while Buxton lost at home to Telford by 2-0. Those results mean South Shields leapfrog filed into first place and topped the table at Christmas with 49 points, Fylde are 2 behind on 47, while Merthyr are in third on 43. There's then a 6-point gap to Kidderminster in fourth, while just 3 points separates Radcliffe, Scarborough, Darlington and Spennymoor. At the other end of the table, Leamington's torrid season continues. They're rock bottom with just 13 points. Alfreton and Peterborough Sports are in 23rd and 22nd respectively, while Hereford also occupy a place in the relegation zone thanks to an inferior goal difference to Oxford, who also have 20 points. The Bulls, though, do have 4 games in hand on the hoops. It's the two counties derby on Boxing Day as Hereford and Kidderminster renew their rivalry at Edgar Street. Harriers have won 4 of the last 5 meetings between the two sides. Kidderminster boss Adam Murray had a shaky start to his time at Agborough after taking over from Phil Brown in the summer, but they have won their last 3 games, including an excellent 1-0 win against league leaders Fylde on Saturday, and are up to 4th in the league. A tough assignment, Keith, seems to have got even tougher over the last month.
It has, but there again, it's a great challenge for these players up against full-time Kidderminster. You know, they've got good wins, both against Merthyr and South Shields on the road. They've just beaten Fylde at Agborough this last weekend. So the prospect for the Hereford players is, look, we don't want an absolute shambles, as we saw last season, and we got thrashed 5-1, wasn't it, at Agborough back in April, 3-0 at Edgar Street last season. Some of these players were involved in those. So it's up to them to step up, get the positive reaction from a defeat at Chorley and just see what you can do and say, look, Harriers, you might be 4th. And then obviously Merthyr are in that mix as well. So those 2 games for the Hereford players, they should be looking at it positively, saying, look, we're as good as you on the day and we're going to give you a good game.
A 3-0 win for Harriers in this fixture 12 months ago. Lovely strikes from then Phil Brown's side, particularly Zach Brown's thunderbolt from outside the box that struck the underside of the crossbar. Of course, he is now plying his trade at Brackley. Given what Kidderminster did in this fixture 12 months ago, Keith, when Hereford were higher up the table and playing fairly well, will there be a fear of what they can do this time around?
There will be, obviously, a free-scoring Ashley Hemmings as well. He's back on loan from Dagenham and Redbridge. I think he scored 33 goals last season. He's back in there. I don't really think he's got in too much at Dagenham, although he scored 5 goals in 21 games for Dagenham and Redbridge. He seems to have been eclipsed by Andy Carroll, who signed a 3-year contract at Dagenham. But be that as it were, Hereford have got to react and just try and compete one-on-one necessarily, win your individual battles and go from there. Because Harriers, well, are on a 4-match unbeaten run. I know supporters weren't happy with Adam Murray coming in to start with, but he has got them into 4th. Whatever you think of the style of play, I think it's probably the lack of goals that a concern to many Harriers supporters. They've only actually scored 29 goals in 22 games. Hereford, 24 from 19? And that's probably where Harriers supporters are looking.
Something that was highlighted after the 3-0 defeat last year was the gap between Hereford and Kidderminster. How can Hereford close the gap this time around?
But it's the old adage, isn't it? You're the player, you're the giant killer, if you like. Just go out there and try and upset a team that are expected to be in the playoffs at the very least at the end of the season. There's a bit of local rivalry because of BBC Hereford and Worcester, of course. It's a 2 counties derby and that sort of thing. And obviously Hereford and Kidderminster go back a long, long way in the Birmingham League, for heaven's sake. Way, way, way back. So there is history of matches between the clubs. But I just feel it's the support as well. Boxing Day fixture should be a good crowd. Harriers have sold out their allocation. So in terms of atmosphere, hopefully the pitch holds up well and we get this game on. But my concern about Hereford is just to overcome this sort of we're not good enough comment. You're not going to compete against teams at the top. They are full-time and we're not full-time. We're part-time. We don't train enough. All of these should be addressed by the club in future seasons, but the players that are here at the moment, get on with it. Let's get some results on the board.
And on that, Keith, part-time Brackley and Tamworth, two sides to win the National League North title in the last few years.
Yeah, it obviously can be done. You've got to have a close-knit squad. You need to build it up. Certainly Brackley took years and years and years to get through that. They always seem to fall at the final hurdle, but they worked their way at it, kept a solid squad, and work your way. And that Hereford, for whatever reason, don't seem to be able to do that. It was a slight change after the first season under Paul Caddis, retained a majority of the players that he wanted to keep, but it certainly didn't happen this last summer. And as I say, we've been playing catch-up in terms of squad personnel seemingly ever since. We've brought some great loan signings in, but they're only ever going to be temporary. With non-contract players as well, teams can come in with a good old 7-day approach, as we seem to have seen with Amari, Sterling James, and it just upsets any momentum that you might have of building a settled squad.
Being the full-time side, you'd expect Kidderminster to have the majority of possession. How important then, Keith, will moments for Hereford be in this game?
Well, as ever, derbies usually turn on tiny little events somewhere along the line. I can remember players almost looking at the crowd thinking, where are you? And then there's one tackle or one decision by a referee, and all of a sudden the crowd get involved and it changes the atmosphere within the stadium, and it can be a real positive because it's going to be a tough old festive period otherwise, as you say. Harriers first and then free-scoring Merthyr. And those are two incredible matches over the festive period. Normally, you'd be looking at them relishing the prospect of those two, but at the minute, there's that doubt in your mind, can Hereford compete?
Looking at it from a Kidderminster perspective, a lack of goals this season has been a concern to Harriers fans. Riley Reynolds is their top scorer with just 4 goals this season. You could say, Keith, that they are spreading the goals around the team, but on the other hand, unlike previous seasons where Ashley Hemmings and Amari Morgan-Smith have maybe dug them out of situations, they don't necessarily have that this season.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think they brought Michael Gayassi in from Kings Lynn, who scored 16 goals for Peterborough Sports last season. I think he came in on loan as well. So they're juggling the pack, as it were, to try and rectify that. And yet they get results overall. Their only losses on the road are at Fylde. That would have been a difficult game. They lost 2-1. But they lost to Peterborough Sports and they lost to Marine. So it's not as though they're world beaters. But as you say, they're not free scoring, but they often do enough. And it's intriguing to find out, talking about lack of goals, and yet they failed to score on the road only once this season, and that was in a 2-0 defeat at Marine. Everywhere else, they've scored goals. As I say, great victories at South Shields 2-1. They beat Merthyr down at Penydarren Park by 1-0. Kings Lynn 1-0. It's always difficult to get a result there. And so Adam Murray, from the outside, is doing a good job to get Harriers into 4th. Whatever the support base might think, they may not be happy with styles, formation, all the rest of it, but at the end of the day, he's getting results. And of course, he won the National League North with Fylde back in 2022-23.
It should be a great occasion. On Boxing Day, around 4,000 fans packed into Edgar Street to see the rivalry renewed between Hereford and Kidderminster. And maybe one of the messages that both managers, Keith, will be giving to their players is enjoy the occasion, enjoy the pressure, because it's very rare in the 6th tier of English football that players will be able to play in front of crowds of this size.
That's right. Yeah, as I say, it should be something the players should still relish. Let's hope that Hereford players come to relish it more than Kidderminster and get that revenge for that horrible double 8-1, if you like, on aggregate last season. Let's hope Hereford can get a victory and give home fans something to cheer about.
And it's another rivalry 4 days later as they take a trip down to South Wales to meet Merthyr Town. And what a great job Paul Michael, the Martyrs boss, has done. Led them to the Southern League Premier title this year and has now got them to 3rd place in the National League North, Keith.
Yeah, they've really flown up that table right from the beginning, really. There was, I think, probably a little bit of concern would they adjust to National League North matches after playing in the Southern League Premier Division South, but they only lost 1 game at home all last season, so they came in with extreme confidence. And as we know, Ricardo Rees is just a free-scoring player, out-and-out striker. 24 goals he's scored already this season. You look at Hereford, 24 in total. He's got them on his own. So, wow, what a game that's going to be in prospect. Probably the highest gate of the season down at Penydarren Park, probably around about 2,000, could be over 2,000. I think Hereford have virtually sold their allocation, if not as we speak, but within minutes probably of doing so. Really tough game, as you say. Only Radcliffe and Kidderminster have prevented Merthyr from scoring at home this season in 11 games. Yeah, what a tough game in prospect. But again, it's the challenge. Go down there, show what you can do.
And like Kidderminster on Boxing Day, Hereford will need to be ready for a hostile atmosphere.
It will be a very hostile atmosphere, you can be sure of that down there. There's been rivalry, obviously, with Merthyr Tidful, as it was in those days, back for Hereford United back in the day, and there were always some very tough matches between the clubs. A couple of links as well between Hereford and Merthyr. Steve Jenkins, former Hereford assistant manager, Keon Riffel, Gavin Williams, Dean Clark, just to name but four. And then, of course, John Charles, if you go way back to the 70s, managed Hereford as a player manager, and then Merthyr back in 71, 72. So there are links between the clubs, always that sort of cross-border rivalry.
Yeah, and of course it's stating the obvious, isn't it, Keith? But maybe there's just a little bit more added spice because it's England versus Wales.
I suppose it is, really. I'm sure it gets overplayed a little bit to a degree. But yeah, there is something there. Anything to get the crowd going, I suppose. One thing I would look at, there have been no draws yet at Penydarren Park this season in 11 games. They either win or lose. 4 defeats: Marine, Scarborough, Ratcliffe and Kidderminster. So it's not exactly that are unbeatable at home, but when they get going, boy, do they score. Knocked 6 past Alfreton, 4 past Leamington, and 3 against Darlington, South Shields, and so I could go on. It's going to be one of those games, as Paul Caddis would say, stay in the game and see where you can go from there. But it's been very difficult, I think, to shut out Merthyr completely over the 90 minutes. So Hereford are probably going to have to score, if not 1, but 2.
Yeah, I think one thing you can guarantee on the 30th of December for those travelling Hereford fans is goals, that's for sure. Now, Ricardo Rees, Keith, you've already touched on him, 24 goals this season. Hereford have had experience of trying to shut out master marksmen in the National League North already this season, namely Paul Blackett, who they did a successful job on up at South Shields. How do they make sure that they keep Ricardo Rees quiet?
So difficult. I wouldn't like to call that. Whether they can double up again, get Matt Preston alongside Carl Hawkins again, to basically keep him man-marked for the whole 90 minutes. But I'm sure clubs right across the division have tried to keep him quiet, game in, game out, and it's not been successful. So unless Paul Caddis can get the rabbit out of the hat and find a winning way of stopping him, let's hope he comes up with something that works.
Options at the back, particularly at centre-half. Quanta brings a little bit more mobility to that Hereford back line. Who would you go with?
Well, again, are you going to play 3-5-2? Have the 3 centre-backs and then the 2 wing-backs tucking in, Hudson and Skinner. The danger with that is you end up with playing 5-3-2. All the defenders come back and you're really giving the game to Merthyr then, because they'll be on the front foot into the final third straight away. Unless you're going to play attacking wing-backs, that's very difficult. So it's going to be a call. Maybe Conser will get it because he's more athletic. We've seen Preston and Hankins beaten for a little bit of pace if they get turned this season. Is that a worry? Yes, it is. I wouldn't actually like to make that call because it might be down to how well they play against Kidderminster, to be fair. And the game is only, 4 days after the Harriers match at Edgar Street. So that may play its part in making Paul Caddis' decision for him. 1 or 2 might get an injury.
And what about the midfield options, Keith?
Well, he brought Hamilton in again for the match at Chorley because of being cup tied and all the rest of it. He wasn't able to play regularly. He had a great full debut up at Chester, and he created the goal for Andy Williams up at Chorley. So I'd like to see him probably keeping his place in there. because his athleticism, like Keenan Quansah's, might be needed against two teams that like to move the ball around fairly quickly through midfield and up to Merthyr, probably the main man, to probably try and get blocks in and do the harder, the physical side of football that Lawson Darth doesn't necessarily do. As you say, combinations once again, whatever system Paul Kelly's, not forgetting Adam Rooney will have input, I'm sure, but whatever they come up with between the two to try and get results. If Hereford gets 0 points over Christmas, they're going to be right in the thick of it in the relegation zone.
And just one more Martyrs player to touch on, Keith. Chorley Cox, ex-Pegasus and Westfield striker. A lot's been made of him already, particularly in the local press. He played very well last season, double-digit goals in the Southern League Premier. He's found goals harder to come by in the National League North, but it's a move that's worked out well for him.
Good to see a local player playing well for a team at Hereford's level or above. I don't really have a concern about that. A lot of people saying, oh, well, they should come through a Hereford academy. How on earth Hereford are going to pay for that? And if you bring a player through, if you're outside the Football League, you don't get a transfer fee for them. So you can put, say, 7 years or 7-8 years into a young player, and then somebody will just come in and snap their fingers and take him away from you. So to be playing well at Merthyr is good, and it just shows that there is talent out there. They're nurtured and they've got the right attitude, because several players locally, they have got the ability, without a doubt, and they break through, but they're not able to necessarily maintain it for whatever reason. Travelling might be an issue for some, other jobs might be an issue, but you know, there's footballing talent in and around the county without a doubt. Just not necessarily 10 or 20 a year that you can look at. It's the odd one or two standout players.
2 derbies in a row, Kidderminster at home and then Merthyr away. Two-party question. How much are you looking forward to the next 7 days, and could this week make or break Hereford's season?
Well, I am really looking forward to them because, as you say, there's such attractive matches. Kidderminster at home, Merthyr away, not too far to go. Big crowds at both grounds, and the atmosphere should be really good. And Hereford will look at themselves as the underdogs probably in both games, because ordinarily you would have said Merthyr against Hereford. Hereford would be up there, but it's the way Merthyr have gone about their business this season that makes these two games quite fascinating. And it's up to Hereford, as I keep saying, they've got to just maintain that and say, that challenge is going to spark us into life somewhere, because if they don't, the flip side is you're already then looking at the bottom 4 on a regular basis. You may have games in hand, but it's always so difficult to pick up those points, to catch up. It's better to be ahead, get the points on the board, and let others have that pressure, because you'll end up saying, oh, we've got 2 games in hand. Oh, we didn't win that one, but we've still got a game in hand, and you might be 3 points behind. So all of a sudden, it's a must-win game. Hereford need to get away from that by chalking points up somewhere along the line in the next 4 or 5 weeks, with or without these loan players or new players coming in. It's such a difficult challenge now, and I'm not sure Hereford have they got the finance to deal with it. Have they got the reserves? We talked about profits over the last 2 years. They're there for a reason, and surely one of the reasons is to maintain your status. I can't believe I'm saying this. Maintain your status in the National League North. This year should have been a progress. We've not yet made the playoffs, but this year we are going to make the playoffs. We're going to do whatever is necessary to get this club up into the top 7. And it's just completely backfired and not worked. Whatever reasons, combination of reasons, I'm sure. But now it's a case of damage limitation. Make sure you stay in this league, because I'm not sure Hereford's long-term survival would be as a Southern League Premier Division Central team, for heaven's sake.
Well, to all of our loyal listeners, it's a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yes, that wasn't a very happy note to finish on, was it really?
From Keith and I. Next time the Bullscast will be back will be in 2026. And by then, you and I, Keith, will be either very positive or very downbeat.
Well, you've got to keep positive throughout. It's just that when you see something you think needs to be addressed and it isn't being addressed for whatever reason, it just gives you a lot of concern, and you think, why is this happening? But, fingers crossed, let's hope for a Merry Christmas. And on the pitch, let's get hope for a successful festive period, and we can come into January with a much better outlook.
There's a full fixture list of National League North action this Boxing Day, starting with 2 early kickoffs. Scarborough host Darlington at 12:30, while Oxford City play Merthyr at 1 o'clock. It's then back to the 3 o'clock kickoffs for Telford versus Chester, Curzon Ashton versus Radcliffe, and Fylde versus Chorley. Peterborough Sports travel to Kings Lynn, while Bedford are away at Leamington. Hereford versus Kidderminster isn't the only local derby this Friday. Macclesfield host Buxton, while Southport make the relatively short trip to face Marine. South Shields, they'll take on Spennymoor, while Worksop are at home to Alfreton. There's then another full programme of action on Tuesday the 30th of December, all kicking off at 7:45. Leamington travel to Alfreton, Bedford are at home to Kings Lynn, it's Buxton versus Worksop and Chester versus Macclesfield. Chorley will take on Marine, while South Shields visit Darlington. There's a local derby as Kidderminster host Telford, while Hereford, of course, travel to Merthyr. It's Peterborough Sports versus Oxford City and Radcliffe versus Fylde. Southport host Curzon Ashton, while Spennymoor are at home to Scarborough.
This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.